Why don't you try these references on for size? He's heating up. He's on fire. Boom shakalaka. The DYOJO podcast. He's on fire. Boom shakalaka. I was thinking about, that's a shout out to you 90s kids, the original, NBA Jam. Those of you that are viewing on YouTube, my daughter found me this sweet Sonic shirt from the 90s. It says established in 1967, so she thought it was from the 60s, but, it's a 90s. It's clearly a 90s logo. So, if I remember correctly, I think the Sonic started in 72. Let's look that up real quick. I'm an idiot.
What an idiot! Oh, what a loser! Good!
Established in 1967. So it says it right on the shirt.
Jeez, I'm an idiot!
Right on the shirt. It literally says that on the shirt.
Damn it! Sorry, guys, I lost my composure out there. I'm an idiot, right?
Anyways. I might edit it out. Might leave it in. He's not on fire. Anyways, let's get to the topic. When I was managing a team in Eugene, we were thinking through this process of we had kind of the core down. And if we were going to grow the team, and in my mind, so if I'm going to be able to pursue my next level of responsibility, roles, responsibilities, opportunities, those kinds of things, I want people behind me that can take the mantle, move the ball forward, keep our system going, the people, good people that we had in our team, create opportunities for them, and keep people employed, right? And then grow the team. If you're not growing, you're dying, right? And so often we have, I think we all know this, right? There's these information silos where people want to protect their position, and we all hate it. We all have suffered from it at one point or another. And then yet, when you get into a spot or a position of power, sometimes you're so scared there's not another opportunity that you repeat what you've seen in other people. And so it's crazy how we do that to each other, right? To where Rachel Stewart talked about that on our last episode, 20 of the DYOJO podcast, about the scarcity mindset versus the abundance mindset, right? And so that idea that, there's not enough, and there's enough, there is enough, and there's plenty of work, there's plenty of opportunities. And so when you free yourself to see, if I can create an opportunity and move forward, that allows the people that have been working for me and doing well and helping me achieve my dreams to move forward. And so as part of that process for us, the growth mindset and those kinds of things, I was so fortunate to find this book, Organizational Physics: The Science of Growing a Business, by Lex Sisney. So I look at the description, I get the audio book, and it's like a scientific, his whole concept is, what is a system and a structure and a way of thinking about things, an organizational system that, translates across all industries. So, because sometimes it's so hyper focused, that it works for the author and the industry that they're working in, the system that they're working with, that it doesn't apply necessarily to you. And so I think Lex accomplished that. It's one of those, I'm glad I got it on audiobook, because you kind of listen to it, you re-listen to it, and then there's one I need to buy the book so I can go back, and I like to read typically. That might have been one of the first audiobooks I bought, but I like to read and mark it up and kind of go back and reference notes and those kinds of things. So I picked it up. Well, I also, just being sheepishly naive, I just reached out to him. I was like, hey man, I really enjoyed your book. Would there be a time? I had a blog, I actually had the DYOJO as a WordPress, I think I had started doing some writing with restoration and remediation, and I reached out, just to say, hey, could I ask you some questions about the book and your process and how that came about, and some of the things I'm thinking about. And he graciously agreed. And so I ran to Best Buy. I bought a little recorder. I had the phone on like speaker, and I didn't know I was even less technologically proficient than I am now. And so I pieced that together. I think I only ever put out segment 1 of a 2-parter, because like at that time, I don't know if it was just me or you could only load like 15-minute videos onto YouTube or something like that. And so anyways, so it's out there. You can see that old interview. You can hear the audio of it. And so I was super grateful that Lex gave me another shot to talk to him again. He's been posting different thoughts as he is a coach, a CEO and coach. He is a business scaling expert and a wizard at organizational structure and design. He works with CEOs and leadership teams of expansion stage companies who are committed to growing their businesses without compromising their values. And what's so cool is you read his book and you'll hear in the interview, like this was him internalizing, like his company was blowing up and commission junction, and figuring out how to change himself. You probably heard, what got you here won't get you to the next stage, and you have to evolve and adapt and put in systems. And so it talks about how he went through that process for himself, and then creating something that he felt would help other people do the same. And that's his business now, is coaching businesses how to scale. And if you don't believe that's important, man, I don't know how many businesses I've seen that have grown too fast too soon. They don't have the systems in place to manage the growth, and so they just end up biting off too much, more than they can chew, and they tank, and it usually does not end well. And so it can be as dangerous. You need to grow in order to survive, but it can be as dangerous to grow too quickly. And too often people just think, well, I'll just do what I've always done and that'll be fine, and I'll just times that by 10 and we'll be fine. It's what's the 7x, 10x, 5x, whatever right now is a popular term, stupid term. And so it's not just that simple. Like, you have to change as the leader. Your organization has to change. You have to bring different people in. Skylar Lewis talked a lot about that on episode 19, about that, bringing a coach in thinking they're going to fix everybody else. And really they say, well, we got to start with you. And so, that's kind of this whole idea of the DYOJO podcast, is learn from other entrepreneurs who have, been there, done that, or in the trenches, actually doing it, and shortening your own learning curve by listening to people that are out there doing it. So hopefully you enjoy. I was so grateful for this conversation. Like I said, really do enjoy this book, Organizational Physics, The Science of Growing a Business by Lex Sisney. He's got great stuff on his website and posts, really thought-provoking things on LinkedIn as well. So I'm excited, and I know there's a lot of restoration businesses. You're either really struggling right now, to kind of make things happen, or you got all this stuff coming in and trying to figure out how to navigate. Are we at the point where we need next stage growth? So great discussion with Lex, and let's get to it. He's on fire. Ready to rock and roll?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I want to be mindful of your time. So, all right. Well, we're here with Lex Sisney, the author of Organizational Physics, and you have on your, I was noticing on your LinkedIn, a wizard of organizational structure and design. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that means and how that's come about?
My next guest is Wizard. Hi.
Hello, Doctor.
Tell me about how to cast a spell on somebody.
Sure. So organizational physics is a way of looking at systems, right? And understanding kind of the trade-offs and the underlying principles that exist within all systems, all organizations. I happen to deploy these principles in expansion stage companies. So the typical client for me is, 100 to 300 million in annual sales. They're growing quickly, and as they've grown, complexity has increased, and there's kind of this ceiling that every organization hits. And the founder, CEO realizes, like, okay, I know we need to reinvent how we do things in order to go to the next stage, but I don't want to sacrifice our core cultural DNA, right? Those core values, that entrepreneurial edge. And so I step in those key transition points and help the CEO and leadership team to quickly kind of transition through that hard area into the next stage of growth and innovation. And why I call myself a wizard of organizational structure and design. I actually didn't come up with that term. One of my clients,
that's awesome.
Had mentioned it to me, but structure is very misunderstood concept.
Yeah.
It's not the org chart. It's not reporting lines. If you look at all the business terms and concepts out there, I would rank structure as the most misunderstood. But think of it like this: design controls behavior, right? How anything's designed determines how it performs, and every organization has a design to it. There are key parts in an organization's development where you need to work at a structural level. And if you can work at that structural level and realign the structure to the next stage strategy, then it actually makes doing things that everybody's aware of, like having a better culture, hiring great talent, being able to delegate, right? Being able to execute across multiple businesses simultaneously or business units simultaneously. All those things are enabled by structure. It's just not widely understood yet.
So structure, in your structure, would be different than processes, structure. Processes.
Yeah. If you think about it like this, human body, the structure would be akin to the skeletal system, right?
Yeah.
If my hip's out of alignment, or if I had a curved spine, no matter what I do, I'm going to be in pain. I'm going to suffer. I'm not going to move very well. I'm not going to be very agile, right?
Well, that's a great analogy too, because your body can adapt to that abnormality, right?
Adapt
the wrong way.
And maladjust to the abnormality. We do that all the time in businesses. Now, then, if structure is a skeletal system, then processes would be akin to the circulatory system.
Okay.
The neural network, right? Now, think about that. Without process, the skeleton's a dead system.
Yeah.
You got to have good structural alignment, but then equally important, you have to marry that with the right processes to bring that structure alive, be able to delegate. But with the right visibility and control to unlock innovation. So there's a dance there, and I kind of specialize in working at those two levels, structure and process. By the way, just quick aside, that's one of the other things that confuses people about structure is people can equate, even experts equate structure and process as the same.
Sure.
And they're not.
Right?
But they're distinct.
They're very connected.
They're interdependent, but you have to treat them as distinct things or think about them in that way. So for example, you should have a top-down structure. Right? However, a top-down structure doesn't mean a dictatorship.
Right. Yep.
The only reason to have a structure is to push authority down so that those closest to doing the work have the autonomy to make decisions. Right? And get the work done.
Yep.
So if you conflate those two in your mind, that structure and process are the same, you come up with all kinds of crazy workarounds that, like you said, are just maladaptations to the like a lot of the COVID response. It's the cure can be worse than the original disease.
Or those unintended consequences too. Well, I can remember when I was still managing a division in Eugene, I got a hold of your book. I've got it up there, The Organizational Physics, and you very graciously talked to me early on. I think our first interview was, I had a little recorder that I bought at Best Buy, and we were over the speakerphone. But so that structural analogy, you'll probably appreciate this. So when I got an opportunity to run a shop in Seattle, I thought thinking people would be more like myself, right? So I thought I'll bring the right people in, and then we'll decide on the structure together and we'll implement it. What I learned is not everybody's a builder, right? And it doesn't poo-poo on anybody's skills and abilities, just not everybody's wired that way to build the structure. A lot of people need the structure, the boundaries, right? Which is a lot of the way my wife and I do our parenting is you set the boundaries and then people can thrive, but not everybody is going to help set the skeleton up.
Yeah, it's not a natural way of thinking. One way to think about it is, do you ever play Dungeons and Dragons?
I haven't. I've got plenty of friends that do.
Yeah. So imagine a group of friends sitting down to play a board game, but there's no goals, structure, rules, roles to be performed, right?
Yeah.
That's not going to be a lot of fun. And one way to think about the journey from an entrepreneur to CEO is, as an entrepreneur, you're like the best player at the game.
Yeah.
You know, it's in your DNA, you're fast thinking, you take risks, you kind of innately know what to do, and people kind of, rally around that skill. But as the business goes in complexity, the entrepreneur has to shift to be more of, what would be equivalent in D&D to like a dungeon master.
Yeah.
Or the game master.
Sure.
More focused now on ensuring a good experience and the right design.
Right.
That game for the rest of the players.
Right. To make it enjoyable. Yep.
But so a democratic process to design the structure can actually really backfire.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you don't take into account other perspectives, but you got to have some principles, right? You don't design around people, you design around principles.
Yep.
People change, principles don't. So here's the design principles we're using. Okay, that makes it safe to get feedback and perspective on the roles people want to play.
Right.
Not everyone should report to me because I'm the best.
Right. Yeah. I tried to flatten too soon, I think. I think it is important. You've got to, like you're talking about, you've got to set it up and set the boundaries and whatnot. And so
And now it's time for a not so subtle ad break.
Do you really need to start hitting some shots with your marketing? Tired of planting seeds, but then only pulling up weeds? When it comes to your advertising efforts? Tired of feeling like you got an idea that can really get the fire started, only to have someone blow it out? Why write for yourself and continue to lose when you can get the winners, our mediocre writers, winners at the DYOJO writing for you today. You better move. It's a slam dunk. Better move. Freelance articles, ghostwriting, copy for your webpage, transcribing YouTube videos into articles, content optimization, blog posts, book reviews, authentic content that will engage your target audience. Get somebody who knows your content and can optimize it for the robots on the internet, as well as the people that are actually going to be reading and seeing your content. Don't just hire some kid in his mom's basement.
Shut up and sit down.
And that's so organizational physics came out of the company that you were involved with was or founded, right, was Commission Junction.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly from when we previously talked, that was as you were scaling, you realized you had to change and adapt in the people in your company. And then the physics, I think most people are aware, the law of entropy, that everything tends towards chaos, and then matter is neither created nor destroyed. So you have to have that balance of influx of energy and the right output of energy. So am I remembering that correctly, that you developed that while you were at Commission Junction?
Yeah, I didn't develop it when I was at Commission Junction, but what I experienced leading, exponential growth company like that is, as a leader, you got to be 2 or 3 steps ahead of the rest of the organization. If you're kind of managing from behind, or trying to play catch up, and you don't have a good mental model to make decisions around, you'll just do what's popular or what your board tells you to do, and you get all this conflicting advice, and it weighs really heavy in your mind. And so you have to come up with, metaphors or models, frameworks. You can say, okay, this situation, here's what should happen.
Yeah. You
got to be really astute at that, so you're several steps ahead. And what happens in an exponential growth company is you quickly realize that the popular advice is often just wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't because you get this rapid feedback.
Yeah.
Right. One metaphor might be, let's say that we're in Holland and there's a hole in the dike. Is it a crisis? Well, I don't know. Let's look over the wall. Is there a lot of water pressure? The water's low. Okay, we'll fix it when we can.
Right.
Hyper-growth company, a little crack in the dike, right?
Yeah.
Disaster.
Yeah.
So you realize, make what I thought was a good decision, and you get this rapid feedback of the equal and opposite reaction in the other direction, and you're like, oh man, I need a better way to approach these problems that's more systematic.
Yeah.
It's more foundational.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, then you can really start to see, firsthand, same team, right? Same company,
Right.
We changed structure, we
Right.
brought some new process, we maybe refine the strategy, totally different company.
Yeah.
So how things are designed really do determine how they perform. And so Commission Junction was that kind of foundational experience of going through that.
Yeah.
Right. Man with a person with the experience is not at mercy of a person with just an opinion. Right. It's not like I just read the book and it sounds like a good idea. Like I lived it.
Yep.
And then over time, I developed organizational physics, which was kind of a way to think about, okay, well, why do all systems behave in a certain way?
Yeah.
What's the foundational truth you can spot across boundaries, right? Across domains. Right. It's true in physics. It's true in organizations. It's true in life. That seems like a mental model you could take to the bank.
Right. Yeah.
So that was the birth of organizational physics.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's it's a very simple, in nature, but there's a lot you can do with that and expand from it, and it applies to multiple disciplines. So, when did you decide to write the book and release the book, and what was that process like?
Mm-hmm. I wrote the book as I was trying to think of ways to communicate these concepts, and I kind of had some criteria. One was the language would translate across geographies and cultures.
Yeah.
So physics is true in Paris, it's true in Tokyo.
Yeah.
Okay? And it takes a little effort to understand the principles and the metaphors, but once you get it, you can just go, oh yeah, I see how that works in all these different areas. And I then started to kind of write the book. And I remember I was in a conversation with Seth Godin. I sent him a draft, and he's like, "There's some really amazing concepts here, but you have like five books here in one. Every bestseller has to only really have one key concept." He goes, "What do you want this book to do? Do you want it to be a bestseller, or do you like be a tool for your consulting practice?" And I was really clear I needed it to be a tool for my consulting practice, and the way I think is kind of very sequential way, and so that the book was just born out of that.
Yeah,
desire to teach these concepts in my consulting work.
Yeah, I remember. I think I got it on audiobook, and it started playing, and it's like you do a great job of they're very deep. You're digging into science and applying that to business, and like you said, it translates. Like as you're saying it, it completely makes sense.
Yeah,
but it's definitely one of those books where you want to go back and buy the book and kind of re-reference things and kind of dig back through. And like I said, you do a great job. It's not like reading a textbook, it's
it'll never be a bestseller, but for those who kind of get it and dive in, it's very, very, very useful tool to have in your arsenal.
And I think like you said, so many books try to, this is the only way to do it, and this is how I became successful, and you can be successful too, whereas more of a framework, right? And there's a lot of practical stuff, and you do a great job on your website of, supplementing that with, current context and things like that. That was one of the ones that's really challenged me lately is, I don't remember, I think you called it the stop-start ideal, thinking through if you're coaching somebody, but I've tried to approach, with myself, what is something you need to stop doing?
Yeah.
And what do you supplement that with what you start doing? And in the broader context, what's the ideal of you're trying to reach? It's like, it's very, very simple, but not always easy, because usually it comes down to you need to stop being dumb, right? And do the thing that you need to do. So
there's a great book I've been reading called Immunity to Change.
Okay.
and they do a really exceptional job. The authors, by the way, I notice when I read books on Kindle, I have no idea who the author is any longer, right? Their name isn't visible. So
Yeah.
I apologize to the authors. But the book does an exceptional job of delineating between two types of change. There's tactical change.
Okay.
You can just kind of do through discipline, habit, reinforcement, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a different kind of change. It's adaptive change. And adaptive change requires you to go deeper and uncover the kind of inner emotional mental framework you're carrying around that justifies the current behaviors.
Yeah.
And the idea of, hey, in order to make a change, I need to stop doing this.
Yeah.
In order to start doing this, it kind of fits more into the adaptive realm.
Yeah.
Because we have finite energy and time, right? And if I'm doing this existing behavior, it's stealing energy and capacity from the new behavior I want to develop. But anyway, if people find it's hard to stop that behavior, I would look towards the it really requires an adaptive change. It requires some deeper work in order to stop that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I found that a good book I've been reading recently, or finished recently, that kind of encapsulates the difference between those two types of change.
Yeah.
Tactical and adaptive.
Adaptive change. Yeah, that's really good. Well, so we were talking a little bit offline. It's really interesting. I believe COVID is kind of exposing, I think we shared that opinion, it's kind of exposing holes. And one thing leaders and businesses will really miss out on is if we want to blame the troubles you're having on COVID, right? It's an easy scapegoat, as opposed to saying, hey, we had some issues we needed to fix. This is kind of bringing a lot more of them to the surface, and obviously a whole new challenge, not to diminish that. But maybe what were some of the things that you were working with companies kind of pre-COVID? What has COVID kind of, done with, how you're thinking about approaching businesses? And as now things are starting to open up, what do you think that looks like?
Yeah, so the clients that I've been working with, I work around the world and I work in almost every industry you can imagine. And the clients during this period have all been in industries that are growing in COVID.
Yeah.
Right. Or the negative headwinds aren't catastrophic, right? There's been a hit to sales, but they're still trying to drive forward innovation. Their existing strategies pretty well aligned with this new normal.
Yeah.
Okay. And a big part of my work is, I've always worked virtually with CEOs.
Yep.
And we do kind of a discovery stage where we align on the right strategy. We design a structure together. And that's always been done over Zoom,
Yeah.
Then the stage 2 of my work is I often, would usually fly out and work with that CEO and his or her leadership team and take them through a process where the team gets, buy into, oh, here's the issues we have. Oh, here's how we need to resolve them in a systematic way. Here's our strategy, and then here's our structure. And then they put in place, better leadership team methodologies and processes so that the team executes quickly in the new structure against that strategy.
We are interrupting your everyday online experience for this special announcement from the DYOJO. So we all know, we all have heard, if you've been in the industry for any period of time, you've heard about the relationships in the industry. Things aren't what they used to be. It's harder, those kinds of things. And with the introduction of the third-party administrators, it's even harder. And
I hate it, but I love it.
And so there's just more hoops you have to jump through and those kinds of things. So I just got emails from RIA and Restoration and Remediation Magazine on a survey that RIA, Restoration Industry Association, is conducting. And so they want to gather your feedback. So they want this information, RIA wants this information, the Advocacy and Government Affairs Committee and the Restoration Advocate will take the information and go to the TPAs with that information to try to see what we can do about improving that contractor-TPA relationship. So,
who do you think you are?
I think RIA has demonstrated a commitment, especially with the AGA, to try to advocate more on behalf collaborate with contractors, which is a good thing. Definitely needed, right? A coherent, collaborative, sustainable voice, sustainable solutions. And so with this survey, if you've been privy to RA members, have been invited to be a part of a 3-part discussion with Mike Fulton, the president of Xactware, which stemmed from the earlier this year, the conversation that Ed Cross had with Bill Loveland, one of the founders of Xactware, and kind of, presenting the information that contractors feel underrepresented in, our quest to arrive at a fair, discussion on estimating and those kinds of things. And,
No, it's not fair.
and providing our work. So, RIAs bring in people to the table that are decision makers, and this seems to be a good opportunity. It's what they estimate to maybe take 15 minutes of your time, go through each of the programs in the survey. They ask the same 6 questions of each program, so it's, you'll get in a groove, and then you can give that information. You don't have to be a member of RIA. They encourage you to share this with anybody and everybody in your organization, anybody you know in the industry, so that way we get everybody represented. And then to see what RIA can do to continue to bring, decision makers to the table so that we can advocate, and have a voice collaboratively to try to generate those sustainable solutions. So
life's full of tough choices, isn't it?
it seems to me this is a good deal. R&R Mag Online. It's titled Restoration Industry Association launches industry-wide TPA survey. You can look it up directly. I found it. It should be, if you type in TPA, RIA TPA survey, there's one they did previously that had 2 questions. This one has 94. And again, if it's a program you don't work with, you just click no and it goes on to the next. But it's surveymonkey.com/8KHVCL3. So link will be in the video, and please fill this out.
Will do. Okay, filled out. Good. Thank you, doctor. Take 2 of these and call me in the morning.
Have your employees fill it out and share it with your friends so that we can get this information. 15 minutes seems like a small price to pay for potentially getting some feedback that can be used to advocate for our voice. So give it a try.
Which of you fine gentlemen would like to join our team?
Now, I'm not traveling, right?
Yeah.
I don't know when I'll travel.
Yeah.
That I don't have a ounce of fear around the virus. I do have a very low threshold for inanity.
Yeah.
And so when I see what the airlines are doing and the airports are doing to try to help people feel safe, I just face palm. I just want nothing to do with that environment. So,
yeah.
Yeah. But so we'll see how that unfolds. But
yeah. So that's good. I mean, I'm in construction, and a lot of the residential kind of took quite a bit of a hit, but for commercial projects and those kinds of things have been able to keep going. And same kind of thing. Some of the rules, like one of the rules for phase 1 is you have to wear a mask and goggles, and so clearly somebody hasn't thought through what that. When you wear a mask and goggles, you immediately fog your goggles, and so then people are adapting. And there's no easy fix, right? But so you've been, you mentioned the airlines. You posted that, I think, on LinkedIn. It might have been yesterday. There's the seats that are blocked off with the placards and stuff like that. You've been pretty outspoken that you're not a big fan of the quarantine and the lockdown. Have you dug much into what Sweden's approach?
I'm hesitant to even go here, right? Because there's this huge polarization in society. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm just considering no one. I am an exceptional systems thinker, though. Yeah. And my whole career has been built around systems thinking. And it's interesting to me to just go back a couple months, and it seems to make a lot of sense that, hey, there's this new SARS, right, called SARS-2, and seems to have some very, terrible interactions with certain segment of the population or certain areas of the world. Makes sense to let's go into quarantine, let's self-isolate until we have some data, and to ensure that our hospitals, and specifically our ICU units, are prepared to handle an influx. Okay, that was the goal.
Yeah, flatten the curve, right?
To bend the curve. In my naivete, I assume that might take 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And then we would isolate those who were really under threat,
the high risk. Yep.
The high risk groups, and the rest of us would go about our lives. Right?
Yeah.
Just like SARS-1.
Yeah. Yeah.
And wow. Right?
Yeah.
And I don't think it's we've learned a lot, right?
Yeah.
We've seen, I think, that regions of the world that not all have been impacted equally.
Yeah.
States and regions of the world. Those that have taken more of a lighter hand are going to come out of this with more resiliency and less negative impact.
Yeah.
Where I am in California, it seems like the goalpost has shifted.
Yeah.
Because our ICU usage outside of a few isolated areas like prisons and nursing homes, not even close to capacity ever. That data is publicly available.
Yeah.
So that was the goalpost. That shifted to we're going to stay in quarantine until there's a cure.
Yeah.
Which is not sustainable. Yeah. It's not resilient. I mean, imagine you're a small business in California. I mean, really, would you open a small business, local business in California?
Right now?
I mean, after this, right? I mean, it's hard. Let's acknowledge it's very hard to be an entrepreneur, to be a small business owner.
Regardless, yeah.
Regardless.
Yep.
And now there's this unknown factor. This will happen again, right? Yeah. So is the state just going to arbitrarily say you're not essential, you're out?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like crazy. Like it's not sustainable. It's not resilient, and I think it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Because lighter hand, again, if you're at risk, please quarantine.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and that was
like adults, they'll tend to act like adults. If you treat them like children, they'll tend to, rebel like children.
Yeah.
But let's be sustainable. Let's be wise.
Yeah.
Let's pick up the pace. Yeah.
Well, I think that was what was interesting in that article about Sweden. They're it's not like they're just winging it. I think they're I'm gonna
Doctor?
Oh, doctor. Doctor.
Just a couple of doctors.
Doctors in the hallway.
Just epidemiologist. Anyways, I wrote it was Johan Jisek, and I'm sure I botched his name, but their approach was the cure, the long term.
Yeah, you have to think long term.
The herd immunity, right? And so quarantine the most susceptible, those the elderly people and those with pre-existing conditions, and then allow everybody else to kind of in somewhat of a controlled way. Because again, it's like 90% of people that get it survive, over 90%, and then over 80% of those don't need hospitalization.
It's a very, very mild disease.
Yeah.
For most people, outside of some, the old and the immune compromised, and that's the facts.
Yeah. And again, for anybody watching, the thousands watching, this is just two people kind of sharing our opinions, not making.
Doesn't mean we don't have compassion for those who are impacted.
Yeah.
But the vicarious trauma. Yeah. For society is underestimated and severe.
Yep.
And I especially think about the kids.
Yeah.
Who are going to go to school in a reality of wearing masks and social distancing, and you're just teaching some really bad habits. And I mean not bad, like we want to just be courageous and have care and compassion, but really recognize that society needs interconnection, it needs connection, it needs commerce, it needs health, it needs well-being in all its forms. And so let's hopefully we can get to that as quickly as possible.
Well, I've been listening to a podcast and they're talking about what was it? The Spanish flu 1918, and whereas that impacted people of all ages. I mean, strong, healthy athletes were being succumbing to it, and so much different. But a good friend of mine, he was actually on the podcast, Rick Dancer. He noted he's like you mentioned the habits, but he was like, we call it social distancing, and really it's physical distancing, right? 6 feet is physical. We still need to be social and have interactions.
It's really easy to change language. When this first came out, everybody was talking about social distancing, and I'm like, what the hell? I'm not going to socially distance from anyone. I'll physically distance,
right,
but I'm not going to socially distance, and you're not going to tell me to. It's just changed. And now all these people on Facebook are starting to talk about, what Rick was saying, this physically distancing thing. They are using different language. So I think we, by local, we mean local people. Our community.
Absolutely.
Maybe it's a community thing. So that's what I say more often is people in our community with programs. And it's just a learning thing for me, because I was doing all the local thing too. And it's a learning thing. It's a lot. And we have to remember is these small businesses in a month, they're going to need us more than they do right now. And in 2 months, they're going to need us even more. So instead of kind of coming down off this thing, I'm thinking, okay, things are back to normal. It's not going to be back to normal for a lot of people. So I think this is the long haul thing,
It was like, change your thinking, maybe even change the terminology and call it physical distancing, 6 feet or greater, but don't be socially, distancing yourself from other people.
Yeah.
I thought that was a pretty good point.
That is a great point. Framing matters.
So what's next, as is there a follow-up book to organizational physics?
Yeah, I'm working on a book right now, and I'm not sure what the title is, but that should be out in 2021.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to getting that out there. It's really cool.
Yeah. What's your process? Do you try to write every day, or do you write as you get inspired, or you're a structure guy, so I'm assuming you have a discipline?
Some of us are motivated by the positive,
and
others by the negative.
Sure.
And I have a commitment to write every day for a certain amount of time, 5 days a week, or I have to do a donation to a politician I just despise.
Okay.
And I haven't missed a day of writing. Like I just,
It's awesome.
So,
yeah.
Well,
you mentioned.
Anyway, I'm being sincere, but also joking around a little bit. It's like we have to sometimes come up with tricks, hard work that we might not ordinarily want to do, but you just got to grind it sometimes.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Seth Godin. I remember reading some of his stuff early on. He's like, if you want to be a writer, write every day. And and his thing was too, of course, when you start out writing, it's going to be terrible, and it's going to be awful. But if that boat is, if you're in motion, you can refine it and get feedback and change things. And so, my son and I were talking about that just yesterday. Like the fear of failure is worse than failure, because failure you can actually learn from and adapt, like you mentioned. Whereas if you're fearful and you don't do anything, you have nothing to improve.
By definition, failure is feedback.
Yeah, that's good. Well, man, Lex, it's been really good catching up with you. I wholeheartedly endorse organizational physics. Like we said, more of a framework, a structural level. And obviously, if we've got people listening that are in that 100 to 300 million, they can reach out to you. Any other closing thoughts on
I would say the principles of organizational physics work at every level.
Yeah.
And so for smaller business, there's assessments, there's articles. It's a way of thinking that, for a certain kind of individual can be really transformative, very helpful.
Yeah.
So if you're running a smaller business, don't have to be scared by the larger dollar volumes, the principles still work at all levels. So
yeah. Well, obviously, if they wanted to reach out to you directly, you have the organizational physics website, which again, like I said, you do a great job of putting in some current applications of the principles and those kinds of things. And then the book's 2021.
Yep.
Well, great, man. Well, I'm glad to see you're healthy, and thank you so much for spending some time today.
You too, John. Thanks for reaching out. Keep up the great work.
Awesome. Thank you.
This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.